In the art world, I know how to spot a fake, but tonight, I became one. To escape a predator, I invented a protector. I lied that my husband was coming to scare off a creep. I didn't know the king was listening. I didn't know the alpha was hunting. And I certainly didn't expect him to walk through those doors, look me dead in the eye, and say, "I'm here." Now I have 30 days to pretend I belong to him. But the way he looks at me, that doesn't feel like pretend. Chapter 1. $3. That was exactly how much Karis had left in her bank account. She stared at the necklace on the velvet counter. It was fake. A very good fake, but still a fake. The old woman across from her looked hopeful. Her hands were shaking. She needed this money. "It's lovely," Karis said softly. Her voice felt tight in her throat, but the clasp is broken. It was a lie. The clasp was fine. But Karis couldn't tell this sweet old lady that her family heirloom was made of glass and cheap brass. She couldn't crush her, so she lied. "I can give you 50 for it," Karis said. She pulled 2 20s and a 10 from her own wallet. It was her grocery money for the week. Even so, she couldn't walk away. The woman smiled, took the cash, and left. Karis stood alone in the dusty pawnshop. The air smelled like old paper and sadness. She looked down at her shoes. There was a scuff on the black heel. The leather was peeling. She sighed. From her purse, she pulled out a black permanent marker. She colored in the scuff. Good as new. Or close enough so the rich people at the gallery tonight wouldn't stare. Then, her phone rang. The screen lit up. Unknown number. Her stomach dropped. She knew who it was. It wasn't a friend. It wasn't a client. What followed was a sound that haunted her dreams. "Miss Vane," the voice on the other end said. It was smooth, cold, like a snake sliding over dry leaves. "We haven't received the payment for your father's medical bills." Karis closed her eyes. She leaned against the glass counter. "I know. I sent a check last week." "It bounced," the man said. Her heart skipped. Bounced? That was impossible. She had calculated everything, down to the penny. Unless her mother had bought something. Another investment. Another mistake. "I'll fix it," Karis whispered. "Please, just give me 2 days." "You have 24 hours, the voice snapped. "Or we take the house." The line went dead. Karis stared at the phone. Her hands were shaking now, just like the old woman's. The house. It was the only thing they had left, the only roof over her sick father's head. In fact, she had nothing else to sell. She looked at the fake necklace in her hand. $50. She had spent $50 to be kind, and now she was drowning. To make things worse, the gallery event started in an hour. She had to go. She had to smile. She had to appraise art for people who spent more on wine than she owed on her mortgage. Maybe it was fate, or maybe it was just bad luck. But Karis knew one thing for sure. She was done being nice. Nice made you broke. Nice got you hurt. Tonight, she had to be sharp, like a diamond. She grabbed her bag. She checked her marker-fixed shoes. She walked out into the rain. She didn't have an umbrella. She just let the water hit her face. It felt cold, but not as cold as the fear in her chest.
Too loud. Everything was too loud. Zarek sat at the head of the long, polished table. He didn't move. He looked like a statue carved from stone. But inside, a storm was raging. He could hear them, all of them. General Silas was tapping his pen on the wood. Tap, tap, tap. To a human, it was quiet. To Zarek, it sounded like a hammer hitting an anvil. He could hear the heartbeat of the advisor to his left. Thump, 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 thump. It was fast. The man was lying. He was stealing money from the treasury. Zarek could smell the sweat on him. It smelled sour, like fear and onions. "The border is weak, my king," Silas said. His voice was gravelly. "The northern pack is pushing in. We need an alliance." Zarek didn't blink. "We have an army. An army isn't enough," Silas argued. He leaned forward. His eyes were dark. You need a queen. The princess of the north is waiting. She is strong. She is pure blood. A growl rose in Zarek's throat. He swallowed it down. Pure blood. That's all they cared about. Breeding. Power. The council wanted to breed him like a prize horse. They wanted to lock him in a cage with a stranger and tell him to make heirs. The wolf inside him paced. It scratched at the back of his mind. No cage, the wolf snarled. No, mate. I will not marry her, Zarek said. His voice was low, dangerous. The room went silent. As the silence stretched, the air grew heavy. Then we will have war, Silas said. He dropped a file on the table. It slid across the wood, and the blood will be on your hands. Zarek looked at the file. Photos of burnt villages, photos of his people. Hurt. His chest ached. It was a physical weight. The crown. It was heavy. He hated it. He wanted to run. He wanted to shift into his fur and tear through the forest until his lungs burned. He wanted to be free. But a king isn't free. I am going out, Zarek said. He stood up. The chair scraped loudly against the floor. Silas frowned. Out? Now? There is a gala at the Royal Gallery. It is not safe. I don't care, Zarek said. He needed air. He needed to get away from the smell of these liars. He needed to find something real, without warning. A scent hit him. It was faint, drifting in through the open window. It didn't smell like the palace. It didn't smell like perfume or blood. It smelled like rain, and old paper, and something else, something sweet and sad. His wolf stopped pacing. It lifted its head. Find it, the wolf whispered. Zarek ignored his guards. He ignored Silas calling his name. He walked out of the room. He loosened his tie. He felt like he was suffocating. He had to get to that gallery. He didn't know why. As if pulled by a string, his feet moved on their own. He wasn't going there to buy art. He was going to hunt.
The gallery was a shark tank, and Karis was the bait. She stood in the corner, clutching a glass of warm champagne she hadn't taken a sip of. Her feet hurt. The marker on her shoe was holding up, but her patience wasn't. Come on, Karis. Beta Vance leaned in close. Too close. He smelled like expensive cologne and aggressive entitlement. He was wealthy. He was powerful. And he wouldn't take no for an answer. I told you, Vance, Karis said, taking a step back. Her back hit the wall. I'm working. You're always working, Vance sneered. He reached out. His fingers brushed her arm. Look at you. You're tired. You're aging. You need someone to take care of you. His words stung. They were true. She was tired. She was 32 and drowning in debt. Even so, she would rather starve than let this man own her. I'm fine, she said. She tried to pull away. Vance gripped her arm tighter. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Don't play hard to get. Everyone has a price, Karis. I know about your father. I know about the bills. Her blood went cold. He knew. Of course he knew. Men like Vance made it their business to know where the weak spots were. He wasn't asking for a date. He was making a purchase. Panic fluttered in her chest like a trapped bird. She looked around. The room was full of people laughing, drinking, ignoring her. No one was coming to save her. She looked at the door. It was so far away. Let go, she whispered. No, Vance said. Be smart. Say yes. I can make the debt go away. All you have to do is be mine. Mine. The word made her skin crawl. It triggered something deep inside her, a spark of anger, a refusal to be just another object in a collection. Without thinking, the lie spilled out. I'm not single, Karis blurted out. Vance paused. He blinked. What? I'm not single, she said, louder this time. Her heart hammered against her ribs. I'm married. Vance laughed. It was a cruel, wet sound. You're lying. You've been single for years. I eloped. Karis stammered. She was making it up as she went. She was digging a hole, but she couldn't stop. Last week, he's here. He's just parking the car. Vance's eyes narrowed. He looked around the room. Is that so? Where is he? Is he invisible? He's big, Karis said desperately. He has a temper. You don't want to meet him. I think I do, Vance challenged. He stepped closer. He trapped her against the wall. Show me the husband, Karis, or stop playing games. She was trapped. She had lied, and she had been caught. Vance was going to humiliate her. He was going to win. As if the world narrowed, all she could hear was her own pulse. Please, she prayed. Please, just let the floor open up and swallow me. She squeezed her eyes shut. She waited for the mockery. She waited for Vance to laugh. But then, the room went quiet. Dead quiet. The air pressure changed. It got heavy. Thick. Static electricity prickled along her arms. The double doors at the entrance swung open. Karis opened her eyes. She turned her head. A man walked in. He wasn't just a man. He was a force of nature. He was massive, shoulders broad enough to block out the light. He wore a black suit that cost more than her life, but he wore it like he wanted to rip it off. His eyes were dark, scanning the room, hunting, and then they landed on her. Her breath caught. He didn't look away. He started walking, straight toward her. The crowd parted like water. No one dared to touch him. Vance went pale. He dropped her arm. No way, Vance whispered. Karis didn't breathe. She didn't move. She watched the stranger storm across the room. Maybe it was fate. Or maybe her lie had just summoned a monster.
Fear had a taste. It tasted like copper. It tasted like sour milk. And right now, the man standing next to the girl in the corner reeked of it. Zarek moved through the crowd. He didn't have to push. People scattered. They felt the weight of his aura, the heavy, suffocating pressure of an alpha prime. To them, he was a king. To his wolf, he was a predator entering a pen of sheep. His eyes locked on the girl. She was small, fragile. Her pulse was fluttering so fast he could see the vein in her neck jumping. Thump, thump, thump. It sounded like a hummingbird trapped in a jar. But she wasn't looking at the floor. She was looking at him. And her eyes, they were defiant. Terrified, yes, but defiant. She had lied. He had heard it from the hallway. My husband is massive. He has a temper. A smirk tugged at the corner of his mouth. In that moment, he decided to make the lie true. He stopped in front of them. The man Vance was trembling. Vance was a beta, a weak one. He looked like he was about to faint. You, Zarek rumbled. His voice was a low growl that vibrated the floorboards. You are bothering my wife. Vance's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Why, Your Majesty? I didn't know. You didn't know? Zarek stepped closer. He let his eyes flash gold. Just for a second. You didn't know that harassing the Queen is treason? Vance squeaked. He actually squeaked. Without another word, Zarek reached out. He didn't grab the man. He grabbed the girl. His arm wrapped around her waist. She was tiny against him. She fit into his side like a missing puzzle piece. Her body was stiff, rigid with shock, but she didn't pull away. She smelled of rain and old paper, but underneath that, she smelled like safety. His wolf purred, a deep, chest-rattling sound that only she could feel. Darling, Zarek said, looking down at her. He made his voice soft, but it still carried the edge of a blade. I told you to wait in the car. It's dangerous for beautiful things to be left unguarded. Her eyes were wide, shocked. She looked up at him, and for a split second, he saw the intelligence behind the panic. She knew who he was, and she knew he was playing along. She started, her voice breathless. I got lonely. Smart girl. Zarek looked back at Vance. Leave, before I decide to hunt. Vance didn't need to be told twice. He scrambled backward, knocking over a waiter with a tray of champagne glasses. Crash. The sound shattered the silence. Vance fled out the side door. The room erupted in whispers. Phones were raised. Cameras clicked. Flash, flash, flash. "Let go," the girl whispered. She tried to squirm away. "No," Zarik said. He pulled her flush against his chest. He felt every curve, every tremble. "You started this, little liar. Now, we have to finish it." He didn't let her go. He turned her toward the exit. He walked her through the gauntlet of flashing lights, his hand heavy and possessive on her hip. He had come here to escape a marriage. Instead, he had just found a wife.
The leather seat was cold. Carrie sat in the back of the black limousine, her hands clenched in her lap. The windows were tinted, blocking out the screaming paparazzi outside, but she could still feel their flashes like lightning strikes. She was sitting next to the king. King Zarek, the Wolf King, the man who could crush a tank with his bare hands. He was staring at her. His presence filled the car. He took up too much space. His legs were long, spread out with arrogant comfort. He wasn't looking at his phone. He wasn't looking out the window. He was watching her. Like she was a rare artifact he was deciding whether to buy or smash. "You're shaking," he said. "I'm not shaking," Karis lied. "I'm vibrating with rage." He chuckled. It was a dark, rich sound. "You have spirit. For a human. You kidnapped me," she snapped. The fear was there, choking her, but her anger was stronger. She was an appraiser. She dealt with facts. And the fact was, she was in trouble. "Let me out. I need to go home." "You can't," Zarek said calmly. He tapped the glass partition. The car began to move. "You just told the city of Oakhaven that you are my wife. If I let you out now, the press will tear you apart. They will find out you lied. They will find out about your debts." Carrie's froze. "How? How do you know about my debts?" "I have ears," he said simply. "And I have resources. Karis Vane, art appraiser, 3 mortgages, father in hospice, bank account balance, $3. Shame burned her cheeks. He knew. He had stripped her bare in seconds. "So?" she whispered. "What do you want? To mock me?" "No," Zarek said. He leaned forward. His eyes shifted. They were brown now, but there were flecks of gold in the iris. "I want to make a deal." "A deal." Her appraiser brain clicked on. "What kind of deal?" "My counsel is trying to force me to marry a princess I despise," Zarek explained. His voice was hard. "To stop a war. But if I am already married, the treaty holds. They cannot force a man who has found his soulmate." "I'm not your soulmate," Carrie said. "I'm a fraud." "Exactly," Zarek said. "A fraud is safer than a real wife. A real wife wants love. You just want money." He reached into his jacket pocket. He pulled out a folded piece of paper. He held it out. 30 days, he said. "Pretend to be my wife. Live in the palace. Smile for the cameras. In exchange, I pay off every cent you owe. Your father gets the best doctors. Your house is safe." Karis looked at the paper. It was a lifeline. It was salvation. But then, she looked at him. He was dangerous. He was a predator. "And if I say no?" she asked. "Then I open the door," Zarek said. "And you go back to Vance. And the debt collectors." It wasn't a choice. It was an ultimatum. She took the paper. She didn't read it. She knew the cost. "Fine," she said. Her voice didn't tremble this time. "I'll do it. But I have conditions." Zarek raised an eyebrow. "Conditions? You are negotiating with a king?" "I'm negotiating with a husband," Karis corrected. She pointed a finger at him. It was shaking, just a little. "I don't cook. I don't clean. And I am not washing your socks." Zarek stared at her. For a long moment, silence stretched between them. Then, he smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was a wolfish grin. "Agreed," he said. "Welcome to the family, Mrs. Vane."
The palace was a fortress, but tonight, it felt like a farce. Zarek walked into the royal suite, loosening his tie. He was exhausted. The game had begun, and he was already tired of playing it. But then, he looked behind him. Carrie's was standing in the middle of the room. She looked lost. The suite was massive gold leaf on the ceilings, velvet drapes, a balcony that overlooked the entire city. She looked at the furniture like she was afraid it would bite her. "One bed," she said. Zarek stopped. He looked at the bed. It was a custom-made California king, carved from mahogany, big enough for 4 people. "Yes," he said slowly. "It is a bedroom. Bedrooms have beds." "There is only one," Karis repeated. She looked at him with wide, panicked eyes. We didn't discuss sleeping arrangements." "You are my wife," Zarek said, enjoying her squirming. "Where did you think you would sleep? The kennel?" "I thought kings had wings," she stammered. "West wings, east wings, separate wings." "Not when we are proving a love match," Zarek said. He walked over to the dresser and started unbuttoning his shirt. "The staff talks. If we sleep apart, the council will know it is a lie by breakfast." He pulled his shirt off. He heard her breath hitch. He knew what she saw. Scars. Not the clean, surgical scars of humans. Jagged, white lines that crisscrossed his back and chest. Claw marks. Bite marks. A map of violence. He waited for her to flinch, to look away in disgust. Instead, he heard a thump, then another. He turned around. Carrie's was stripping the decorative pillows off the couches. She was dragging them onto the massive bed. She was stacking them in a line right down the center of the mattress. "What are you doing?" Zarek asked, baffled. "Building a wall," she said. She grabbed a bolster pillow and slammed it down like a brick. "This is my side. That is your side. If you cross the wall of fluff, I will scream." Zarek stared at her. She was serious. She was building a fortification out of goose down. A laugh bubbled up in his chest. He choked it back. "You think a pillow will stop an alpha?" he asked. "It's a symbolic boundary," Karis huffed. She kicked off her heels and scrambled onto her side of the bed, pulling the duvet up to her chin. She glared at him over the top of a silk cushion. "Good night, Your Majesty." She closed her eyes. She was faking sleep. Her heart was still racing. Thump, thump, thump. Zarek stood there for a moment. He should be annoyed. He should be insulted. No one denied him. Yet, he wasn't angry. He walked to the bed. He climbed onto his side. The mattress dipped under his weight. He lay back, staring at the ceiling. The smell of her was stronger here. Rain, paper, fear. But the fear was fading. He closed his eyes. Usually, the silence of the room was filled with the ghosts of his past. The nightmares waited for him in the dark. But tonight, there was a wall of pillows and a woman who breathed softly on the other side. For the first time in years, the wolf didn't pace. "Mine," the wolf whispered sleepily. Zarek ignored it. But he didn't knock down the wall. "Good night, little liar," he whispered into the dark, and surprisingly, he meant it. Come morning, the silence was the first thing to greet him. Usually, Zarek woke up gasping. His sheets would be soaked in cold sweat, his claws fully extended, tearing through the silk as the remnants of his nightmares faded. The war, the blood, the constant, gnawing hunger of the alpha core. But today, there was no screaming. Zarek opened his eyes. The room was filled with soft, golden light. His heart was beating at a slow, steady rhythm. Thump, thump, thump. He lay still. He didn't move a muscle. He was afraid if he moved, the piece would shatter like thin glass. To his right, the great wall of fluff had collapsed. During the night, the fortress of pillows Karis had built had fallen victim to gravity. One silk cushion was on the floor. Another was wedged under his own shoulder. And the woman? She had migrated. Karis was curled up in the center of the massive bed. She had kicked off the duvet. Her hair was a chaotic halo of dark curls against the white pillowcase. She was drooling, just a little, onto the linen. She looked small, defenseless, a singular note of fragility in his world of violence. Without thinking, Zarek shifted closer. He shouldn't. She was a contract, a fake wife, a human who thought she could barricade herself against a wolf with feathers and fabric. Yet, his wolf pulled him forward. He hovered over her, inhaling deeply. She smelled like sleep, and that persistent, grounding scent of rain. It quieted the noise in his head. The constant hum of the palace, the whispers of the guards outside, the plotting of the council, it all faded when he focused on the sound of her breath. Mine, the wolf purred. Not a question this time. A statement. Karis shifted in her sleep. Her hand shot out, landing on his chest. Her palm was warm against his skin, right over his heart. Zarek froze. He should push her away. He was lethal. If he had a nightmare, if he shifted in his sleep, he could crush her. Instead, he stayed. He watched the rise and fall of her chest. For the first time in a decade, he felt rested. He felt sane. But then, the heavy oak door creaked. Zarek's head snapped up. His eyes flashed gold. The peace vanished. "Your Majesty," a servant's voice, trembling from the hallway. "General Silas requests your presence." The name was like ice water. Zarek looked back down at Karis. She stirred, frowning, pulling her hand back as she woke up. The moment was over. The king had to return. He rolled out of bed before she could open her eyes. He couldn't let her see him watching her. He couldn't let her know that for 8 hours, she had been the only shield strong enough to protect him from his own mind.
The palace was not a home. It was a museum, where everyone wanted her dead. Karis walked down the endless corridor, her heels clicking sharply on the marble. Click, click, click. The sound echoed, making her feel even smaller than she was. She was lost. She had left the suite 10 minutes ago to find coffee. Just coffee. A simple, human necessity. Instead, she had found a labyrinth of tapestries, statues, and silent servants who looked at her like she was a stain on the carpet. "Excuse me," Karis said, stopping a passing maid. "Could you point me to the kitchen?" The maid stopped. She was tall, with amber eyes that marked her as a shifter. She looked Karis up and down. Her nose wrinkled, as if she smelled something sour. "The kitchens are for staff, ma'am," the maid said. The title wasn't respectful. It was an insult. "If you require sustenance, you should ring the bell in the suite. Humans tend to get confused in the halls." Karis stiffened. She wasn't just a human. She was the queen. Fake or not, she was wearing the ring. "I don't want to ring a bell," Karis said, keeping her voice even. "I want to walk. Now, point the way." The maid smirked. It was subtle, but it was there. Left at the armor, down the stairs. "Good luck." She walked away without bowing. Karis watched her go. Her hands curled into fists. They hated her, all of them. To them, she was just a fragile little thing Zarek had picked up. A pet. A temporary distraction. Maybe it was fate that she was here. But she refused to be a victim. She turned left at the suit of armor. She found the stairs. But instead of a kitchen, she found herself standing in front of massive double doors. Voices drifted out. Deep. Argumentative. "She is a liability, Silas. She is a commoner. A gold digger. We need to expose her." Karis froze. She knew that voice. It was the general, the one who looked at her like she was a bug he wanted to squash. She should leave. She should run back to the suite and rebuild her pillow fort. But Karis Vane didn't run from bad appraisals. She fixed them. She took a deep breath. She smoothed her skirt. She checked the diamond loop she kept in her pocket, her shield, her weapon. She pushed the doors open. The room went silent. It was the council chamber, a massive, circular room dominated by a stone table. Zarek sat at the head, looking bored and dangerous. General Silas stood to his right, flanked by 5 other advisors. They were all huge. They all radiated power, and they were all staring at her. "Am I interrupting?" Karis asked. She walked in, chin high. Her heart was hammering a frantic rhythm against her ribs, but she forced her face to remain blank. Zarek looked up. Surprise flickered in his dark eyes. Then, amusement. "We were just discussing you, my wife," Zarek said. His voice was a low rumble. "I heard," Karis said. She stopped at the other end of the table, facing Silas. "Something about me being a liability?" Silas sneered. He didn't even try to hide it. "We were discussing your suitability. The queen must be an asset to the crown. Educated, cultured, not a shop girl found at a party." "I'm an art appraiser," Karis corrected. "There's a difference." "Is there?" Silas gestured to a pedestal in the corner of the room. On it sat a vase. It was tall, painted with intricate blue dragons. It looked ancient. It looked priceless. "This," Silas said, "is a gift from the Eastern Pac. Ming Dynasty. Priceless. A true queen would appreciate its history. Tell me, human, what do you see?" It was a trap. If she said it was pretty, they would laugh at her simplicity. If she tried to guess the history, she would get it wrong. Karis walked over to the pedestal. The room held its breath. She could feel their eyes boring into her back. They wanted her to fail. They wanted Zarek to see that she was nothing. She took out her loupe. She bent down. She didn't look at the dragons. She looked at the glaze. She looked at the foot of the vase. "It's beautiful," Karis said softly. Silas smirked. "As expected. A simple mind sees." "But it's a fake," Karis finished. The silence that followed was deafening. Silas's face went red. "Excuse me? That vase has been in the royal vault for 50 years. "Then you've been storing trash for 50 years, Karis said. She stood up, snapping her loupe shut. "The blue pigment. See the way it pools at the base of the dragon's claw? That's chemical glazing. Ming Dynasty cobalt doesn't pool like that. It sinks into the porcelain." She turned to face the general. "Also," she added, pointing to the rim, "there's a microscopic maker's mark under the lip. It says, 'Made in 1974. Zarek made a sound. It sounded suspiciously like a laugh. "In fact," he was grinning. Silas looked like he was about to explode. He marched over to the vase, squinting at it. He didn't know what to look for. He was a soldier, not a scholar. "She is lying," Silas spat. "She is an expert," Zarek said. He stood up. The humor was gone from his face, replaced by cold authority. "And she just proved that my council cannot tell the difference between treasure and trash." He walked over to Karis. He stood behind her, a towering wall of heat and protection. He placed a hand on her shoulder. "Be careful, Silas," Zarek warned, his voice dropping to a growl. "You might find that the human sees more than you do." Karis leaned back, just a fraction, into Zarek's touch. Her legs were shaking. She had just insulted the most powerful general in the kingdom, but as Zarek's thumb brushed her collarbone, she didn't feel afraid. She felt like a queen. "So," she smiled at Silas, "next time, General, check the receipt."
The coffee cup looked ridiculous in his hand. It was delicate, white porcelain with gold rimming, barely large enough to fit two of Zarek's fingers. He held it with extreme care, as if it were a grenade. He walked through the glass doors into the royal conservatory. The air here was humid, smelling of orchids and damp earth. Karis was sitting on a stone bench by the koi pond, her nose buried in a book she had found in the library. She looked peaceful. The tension that usually tightened her shoulders was gone. A young male gardener was sweeping leaves nearby. He was a wolf. A pup, really, barely 20. The boy paused, leaning on his rake, his eyes lingering on Karis's exposed ankles where her skirt had ridden up. A low, vibrating sound started in Zarek's chest. Grr. It wasn't a word. It was a warning. A primal claim that vibrated through the glass walls. The gardener froze. His eyes snapped to Zarek. He went pale, dropped his rake, and scrambled backward, bowing so low his nose nearly touched the dirt. "Leave," Zarek commanded. The boy fled. Karis looked up. She blinked, confused. Did you just growl at the landscaping staff? He was loitering, Zarek said stiffly. He walked over and held out the cup. Coffee. Black. 2 sugars. Karis took the cup. Her fingers brushed his. A spark, hot and electric, jumped between them. You brought me coffee, she said, looking at the cup like it was a crown jewel. I thought kings had servants for this. I am courting my wife, Zarek said. He sat down next to her. The stone bench groaned under his weight. The cameras are watching from the upper balcony. We must look. Convincing. That was the lie he told himself. In fact, there were no cameras on the balcony right now. He had checked. He was bringing her coffee because the thought of another man, even a servant providing for her, made his wolf pace in circles. Karis took a sip. She sighed. A sound of pure pleasure. Okay. Courting. What's next? Are you going to bring me a dead elk? Zarek looked at her. Is that what you want? She laughed. It was the first time he had heard her really laugh. It wasn't polite or quiet. It was bright and messy. No elk, she said. Maybe just tell me something real. No script, no counsel. Zarek looked at her profile. The sunlight caught the dust motes dancing around her. I hate this room, Zarek admitted. It was a small truth, but a truth nonetheless. These flowers are from the south. They are too sweet. They smell like a funeral. Karis looked at him. Her eyes softened. Then why come here? Because you are here, Zarek said. The words slipped out before he could stop them. The air thickened. The silence stretched between them, heavy and charged. It wasn't the silence of danger. It was the silence of anticipation. He didn't move away. He leaned closer. He wanted to smell the rain on her skin, to drown out the funeral flowers. You are doing a good job, he murmured, his voice dropping to a rough whisper, convincing everyone. It's just a job, Karis whispered back, though her pulse was hammering a different story. Thump, thump, thump. Is it? Zarek asked. He saw her breath hitch. He saw the way her pupils dilated, swallowing the brown. Maybe it was fate, or maybe it was just instinct. But Zarek knew one thing. He was in trouble.
Night had fallen over the palace, turning the stone walls into shadows. Karis stood on the balcony of the royal suite, clutching her silk robe tight against the chill. Below, the city of Oakhaven twinkled like a sea of diamonds. It was beautiful, and it was all a lie. She looked down at her hand. The heavy gold ring on her finger felt like a shackle. 30 days. They were on day 12. In 18 days, she would take the money, pay the debts, and go back to her empty house. Her chest ached. A sharp, physical pain. She shouldn't care. Zarek was a client, a very large, very scary, very handsome client. You'll catch a cold. The voice came from the shadows. Karis turned. Zarek was standing in the doorway. He had discarded his suit jacket. His white shirt was unbuttoned at the top, revealing the column of his throat. He looked wilder at night. Less king, more wolf. I'm fine, Karis said, just appraising the view. Zarek stepped onto the balcony. The temperature seemed to rise just by his proximity. He stood beside her, looking out at his kingdom. You are unhappy, he stated. It wasn't a question. I'm confused, Karis admitted. She turned to face him. She had to know. She couldn't survive 18 more days of this gray area. Today, in the garden, you looked at me. How did I look at you? Zarek asked. He turned. His eyes were intense, reflecting the city lights. Like I wasn't a job, Karis whispered. Zarek, I know the contract says we have to pretend, but sometimes you forget to act. She waited for him to deny it, to tell her it was all for the cameras, to put the wall back up. Instead, he stepped closer. He reached out. His hand, large and calloused, cupped her cheek. His thumb brushed over her bottom lip, rough against the soft skin. Karis, he groaned. His voice was a low rumble vibrating through her bones. Do you think I bring coffee to employees? Do you think I threaten gardeners for business partners? I don't know, Karis breathed. Her heart was racing so fast she thought he must be able to hear it. You're the king of liars. I have lied about many things, Zarek said. His other hand slid around her waist, pulling her in. There was no resistance this time. I lied to the council. I lied to the press. He lowered his head. His forehead rested against hers. She could feel the heat radiating off him. But the contract is fake, Zarek whispered, his lips brushing hers. The wolf is real. The world tilted. He kissed her. It wasn't a gentle, courtly kiss. It was a collision. It was hunger and desperation and days of suppressed need, finally breaking the dam. Karis gasped, her hands tangling in his hair. He tasted like scotch and fire. He growled a genuine animal sound against her mouth, pulling her body flush against his hardness. In that moment, there was no debt, no Vance, no princess. There was only the wolf, and he was claiming her. Not for the cameras, but for himself.
The kiss still burned on his lips. Zarek sat in his private study, staring at the unlit fireplace. His body was humming with energy. He should be in bed. He should be with her. But a king didn't get to sleep when the wolves were circling. He had left Karis on the balcony, breathless and flushed, promising to return in 10 minutes. He needed to check the security logs. Just a precaution. But then, the door opened. It wasn't a servant. It was Shadow, his head of intelligence. A small, wiry man who moved like smoke. "Your Majesty," Shadow said, bowing low. He didn't look up. That was bad. Shadow only avoided eye contact when the news was catastrophic. "Speak," Zarek commanded. The warmth of the kiss evaporated, replaced by cold dread. "We intercepted a transmission," Shadow said. He slid a tablet across the desk. "From the palace. Encrypted." Zarek picked up the tablet. He tapped the screen. It was a dossier, a file on Karis Vane, but it wasn't the standard background check. It was deep. It had photos of her father in the hospice. It had scans of her bank statements, and at the bottom, highlighted in red, "No marriage license found in city records." Zarek's hand tightened on the tablet. The screen cracked. Snap. "Who sent this?" Zarek demanded. His voice was deathly quiet. "The signal originated from the West Wing," Shadow whispered. "General Silas's office. It was sent to the Northern Princess." Zarek stood up. The chair flew backward, crashing into the wall. Silas knew. Not only that, he had given the evidence to the enemy. He isn't just trying to expose her, Zarek realized, the horror sinking in. He is trying to get her killed. The Princess of the North was not a diplomat. She was a warrior. If she knew she had been rejected for a fake, she wouldn't just be angry. She would be bloodthirsty. "Where is Silas?" Zarek snarled. "He left the grounds an hour ago," Shadow said. "With a full tactical squad." Zarek's blood ran cold. Silas wasn't fleeing. He was clearing the board. What followed was a realization that hit him harder than any blow. He had been so busy courting his fake wife. He hadn't noticed the knife being sharpened at his throat. "Lock down the suite," Zarek roared, already moving toward the door. "Get Karis to the safe room. Now." He sprinted into the hallway. But deep down, he knew he was already too late. The game had changed. It wasn't about stopping a war anymore. It was about keeping Karis alive.
The storm broke over the palace like a hammer hitting glass. Karis stood in the center of the suite, hugging her arms around herself. The air pressure dropped so fast her ears popped. Thunder rattled the antique windows. Boom. Zarek had been gone too long. 10 minutes, he had said. It had been 30. Her lips still tingled from his kiss. It was a ghost sensation, fire and scotch that made her knees weak. She wanted to believe it was real. She wanted to believe the wolf wasn't just acting. Knock, knock. Karis jumped. She turned to the door. Zarek? It wasn't him. A young page boy stood there, dripping wet, holding a folded piece of parchment. He looked terrified of the thunder. "For you, my queen," he squeaked. "From the king. He is waiting in the north garden." Carries took the note. Her hands shook. She unfolded it. "Meet me by the fountain. We need to leave. Now. Z." It was scrawled in heavy black ink. It looked rushed, urgent. Fear coiled in her stomach. Leave? Had the council found out? Were they being evicted? Or worse, was he hurt? "Thank you," she whispered. She didn't grab a coat. She didn't grab her phone. She just ran. She sprinted down the hallway, ignoring the startled looks of the guards. She took the servants' stairs, her heels clicking frantically against the stone. Click, clack, click, clack. She burst out into the garden. The rain was torrential. It soaked her silk dress in seconds, plastering it to her skin. The wind whipped her hair across her face, blinding her. "Zarek!" she screamed. Her voice was swallowed by the gale. She stumbled toward the fountain. It was a massive stone structure, usually beautiful, now ominous in the lightning flashes. There was no one there. "Zarek?" she called again, spinning in a circle. Where was he? Then, she saw a shadow. It wasn't the massive, broad-shouldered silhouette of the king. It was slender, sharp. A woman stepped out from behind the hedge. She wore silver armor that gleamed in the lightning. Her hair was white blonde, plastered to her skull. Her eyes were cold, pale blue chips of ice. "The northern princess? You are smaller than I expected," the princess said. Her voice cut through the storm. Carries backed up. "Who are you?" "I am the woman he rejected," the princess said. She raised a hand. What followed was a blur of motion. 4 men in tactical gear emerged from the darkness. They didn't look like palace guards. They looked like mercenaries. "Run!" Karis's brain screamed. But before she could move, a heavy bag was thrown over her head. The world went black. Rough hands grabbed her arms. She kicked. She screamed. She bit down on a gloved hand until she tasted leather and salt. "Feisty," a man's voice grunted. "Put her in the van." Karis felt a needle prick her neck, a sharp sting. Then the cold spread. Her legs went numb. Her scream died in her throat. As if pulled by a string, her consciousness snapped. The last thing she heard was the roar of an engine and the distant, terrifying howl of a wolf, realizing its mate was gone.
The motorcycle engine screamed beneath him. Zarek wasn't driving. He was flying. The speedometer read 140 miles per hour. The rain was hitting his helmet like bullets, but he didn't feel it. He only felt the bond. It was tearing. It was a physical jagged line in his chest, pulling him north. She is scared. She is hurt. She is fading. "Hold on, Carries," he roared inside his helmet. He saw the taillights ahead, a convoy of 3 black SUVs speeding toward the border, toward the edge of the falls, the border of the Northern Territory. If they crossed that bridge, she was gone. Diplomatic immunity would shield them. He would never get her back. Not again, his wolf snarled. "I will not lose her." He twisted the throttle. The bike surged forward. He wove between the cars, a black blur of vengeance. He reached the lead SUV just as the road ran out. They were at the cliffs. The bridge was blocked by a landslide, fate interfering, or perhaps just luck. The convoy screeched to a halt. Zarek didn't stop. He skidded the bike sideways, blocking the road. He jumped off while it was still moving. The machine crashed into the guardrail, exploding in a ball of fire. Boom. Zarek walked through the flames. He didn't draw a weapon. He was the weapon. "Give her to me," Zarek roared. His voice wasn't human. It was distorted, layered with the growl of the beast. The car doors opened. The princess stepped out. She dragged Carries with her. Karis was limp, drugged, her head lolled back, the rain washing over her pale face. The princess held a silver dagger to Karis's throat. They were standing inches from the cliff edge. Below them, the river raged, a whitewater drop of 200 feet. "Stop," the princess screamed. "One step closer, and I drop her." Zarek froze. His heart hammered against his ribs like a war drum. Thump, 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 thump. You want the throne? Zarek snarled. Take it. Take the crown. Just give me the girl. It's too late for that. The princess spat. You humiliated me, Zarek. You chose a human fraud over a royal. Now, watch what happens when you choose wrong. She didn't bargain. She didn't negotiate. She smiled, and she shoved Karis backward. Karis fell. She didn't scream. She just tipped over the edge into the abyss. No, Zarek screamed. Without thinking, he ran. He didn't run to the princess. He ran to the edge. He dove. He threw his body into the empty air, chasing the falling woman. The wind roared in his ears. Gravity took hold. Shift, he commanded. Now. It usually took seconds. Painful, bone-breaking seconds. But panic was a powerful fuel. In the span of a breath, bones cracked. Muscle expanded. His suit shredded. Black fur exploded outward. A muzzle elongated. Jaws snapped open. He wasn't a man falling. He was a massive, 200-pound black wolf. He paddled the air, fighting physics. He saw her below him, a small, white rag doll against the dark water. He tucked his head. He dove faster. He reached her just before the water did. He couldn't grab her with his claws. He would kill her. So he did the only thing he could. He twisted his massive body in midair. He wrapped his paws around her, pulling her into his chest, and turned his back to the river. He became her shield. Impact. The water hit them like concrete.
Cold. Bone deep, paralyzing cold. That was the first thing Karis felt. Then, a pain. A sharp, stinging sensation on her cheek. She gasped, sucking in air. It tasted like mud and river water. Wake up. The voice was harsh, raspy. Karis opened her eyes. It was dark. She was lying on hard stone. A small fire crackled nearby, casting dancing shadows on damp cave walls. Zarek was leaning over her. But he wasn't the pristine king in the Italian suit anymore. He was naked from the waist up, his pants shredded and soaked, and he was bleeding. A massive gash ran from his shoulder to his hip. It was deep, angry. "You're alive," he rasped. His eyes were frantic, scanning her face. "Check your limbs. Can you move?" Carrie sat up. Her head spun. I think so." She looked at him. The blood was pooling on the stone floor. "Zarek, you're back." "It will heal," he grunted. He tried to stand, but his leg buckled. He collapsed back with a hiss of pain. "Shifter healing. Takes energy. I used it all on the shift." He looked at her. His expression was tormented. Guilt ravaged his face. "You have to go," he said. He pointed to the mouth of the cave. "Follow the river. There is a town 2 miles down. Call the police. Don't tell them who I am." "What?" Carries blinked. "I'm not leaving you." "You are fired," Zarek snapped. He glared at her, trying to summon the Alpha command. "The contract is void. You are done. Get out." "Fired?" Karis stared at him. "We just fell off a waterfall and you're discussing my employment status? Look at me, Karis," Zarek roared. The sound echoed off the cave walls. "I almost got you killed. Silas knows. The princess knows. Being near me is a death sentence. I can't protect you." He turned his face away. His shoulders shook. The mighty king was trembling. "I am a monster," he whispered. "And monsters destroy everything they touch." Carries looked at the shivering, bleeding man. She saw the fear in him, not fear for himself, fear for her. He was trying to push her away to save her, just like he had tried to scare her with the pillow wall, just like he had tried to scare Vance. She crawled across the cold stone. She reached out and grabbed his face, forcing him to look at her. "Shut up," she said firmly. Zarek blinked. "What?" "I said shut up, you idiot," Carrie said. Her voice broke, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I didn't sign the contract for the money. Not anymore." "Karis, I'm not leaving," she said. She ripped a strip of fabric from the hem of her ruined dress. She pressed it against his bleeding shoulder. I don't care about the princess. I don't care about Silas. She leaned in. She kissed the corner of his mouth. It tasted of river water and iron. You're not a monster, she whispered against his lips. You're the man who jumped off a cliff for me. Zarek stared at her. His gold-flecked eyes searched hers for any sign of a lie. He found none. With a groan, he collapsed against her. He buried his face in her neck, his wet body shivering against hers. I can't pay you for this overtime, he mumbled into her skin. Karis laughed. It was a watery, choked sound. She stroked his wet hair. Put it on my tab, she said. Outside, the storm raged on. But inside the cave, huddled together by the dying fire, the contract burned away. Now, there was only the pack, a pack of two.
The silence was deafening. Usually, Zarek woke to a symphony of senses. The heartbeat of a squirrel in the attic, the sap moving through the pine trees outside, the deep, guttural hum of his wolf in the back of his mind. But this morning, there was nothing, just the flat, dead quiet of a room. He lay in the bed of the royal safe house, a cabin buried deep in the Blackwood forest. Carries was asleep beside him, her head resting on his uninjured shoulder. She was warm. She was alive. They had won. They had survived the fall, the river, and the cold. Zarek closed his eyes, reaching for the alpha energy to heal the stiffness in his legs. He pulled at the bond. He called for the wolf. Shift, he commanded silently. Heal. Nothing happened. It was like reaching for a limb that had been amputated. There was no surge of heat, no golden vision, no power. Panic, cold and sharp, spiked in his chest. He sat up, gasping. Carrie stirred, mumbling something in her sleep. But Zarek scrambled out of bed. He stumbled to the bathroom mirror. His hands gripped the porcelain sink so hard it cracked. He looked at his reflection. What followed was a scream trapped in his throat. His eyes, they weren't the liquid gold of the Alpha Prime. They weren't even shifting. They were brown, dull, flat, muddy brown. Human eyes. No, he whispered. No, no, no. He tried to force the shift. He strained every muscle, screaming internally for the beast to rise. Come out, fight me, do something. But the wolf was gone. A wave of nausea hit him. He collapsed to his knees on the cold tile floor. He wasn't a king anymore. He wasn't a predator. He was just a man. A broken, scarred man in a cabin, in the middle of nowhere. Zarek? Karis's voice came from the doorway, sleepy, concerned. He didn't turn around. He couldn't let her see him. He couldn't let her see the emptiness in his eyes. Don't come in, he rasped. His voice sounded weak, pathetic. Are you okay? Is the wound bleeding? I said stay back, he roared. But there was no power in the roar. It didn't vibrate the walls. It didn't demand submission. It was just a shout, a human shout. Zarek realized the truth. The fall hadn't killed him. But something else had. He was hollow. And for an alpha, being hollow was worse than being dead.
The smell of burnt toast filled the kitchen. Carrie stood by the counter, her hands shaking as she tried to butter a piece of bread. She was trying to be normal, trying to pretend that they hadn't just washed up on a riverbank yesterday, trying to pretend that the man in the bathroom hadn't been screaming at his own reflection for 20 minutes. She heard the door click open. Zarek walked into the living area. He looked terrible. His skin was gray. He was wearing a pair of sweatpants they had found in the closet, but he looked like he was shrinking inside them. He wouldn't look at her. Zarek, Karis said softly. I made coffee. He didn't answer. He walked straight to the old television set in the corner. He turned it on. His movements were jerky, desperate. Static hissed. Then, the image cleared. News 7 breaking report. Karis walked over, standing behind him. The screen showed the palace, but it wasn't the palace she knew. Black banners hung from the windows. The flag was at half-mast. A man was sitting on the Iron Throne. Carries gasped. That's Silas. General Silas was wearing the royal mantle. He looked solemn, sad, a perfect performance. Citizens of Oakhaven, Silas said, his voice dripping with fake grief. It is with a heavy heart that I announce the death of King Zarek. Karis grabbed Zarek's arm. What? But, you're right here. Listen, Zarek whispered. The king abandoned his post, Silas continued. He was seduced by a human spy. He forfeited his duty, and in doing so, the Alpha Corps rejected him. Silas held up a hand. It was glowing. A faint, blue pulse of energy emanated from his palm. The spirit of the wolf has left him, Silas proclaimed. The Corps has chosen a new protector. If the former king returns, he returns as a traitor, a human traitor, and the penalty for treason is death. The crowd on the screen cheered. They cheered for the usurper. To make things worse, a photo flashed on the screen. It was Carrie's. A photo from the gallery, looking terrified. The spy, Karis Vane, is wanted for regicide, the reporter's voiceover said. Shoot on sight. Carrie's felt the blood drain from her face. Regicide. They were blaming her. She looked at Zarek. She expected him to be angry. She expected him to smash the TV, to growl, to plan a war. Instead, he turned off the TV. The silence returned. But it was heavier now. He took it, Zarek said. His voice was dead. He used the core to sever the bond. He stole the wolf. He finally looked at her, and Carrie saw it. The dullness in his eyes. The light was gone. The gold was gone. I am nothing, he whispered. Zarek, no. I can't protect you, he said. He backed away from her, as if he were contagious. I can't even protect myself. Karis reached for him, but he flinched. Pack your things, he said. What? Pack your things, he shouted. Take the car. Take the cash in the safe. Go! He turned and walked out the front door, into the snow. Carrie stood there, stunned. The toast burned on the counter. The smell of smoke filled the room. But it wasn't the toast that was burning. It was her world. The snow was falling in thick, white sheets. Carrie marched out of the cabin. She wasn't wearing a coat. She didn't care. The cold biting at her skin was grounding. It focused her rage. Zarek was standing by the old SUV parked in the driveway. He was shoving clothes into a duffel bag. His movements were frantic, sloppy. Zarek! Karis yelled. He ignored her. He threw the bag onto the snow at her feet. There's 10,000 in there, he said, not looking at her. It's enough to get you across the border. Change your name. Dye your hair. Never tell anyone you met me. I'm not going anywhere, Karis said. She kicked the bag. It skidded across the ice. You have to. Zarek spun around. He looked wild. Broken. Don't you get it, Karis? Look at me. I am a human. I am weak. Silas has an army and the power of a god. I have nothing. He slammed his hand against the hood of the car. I am a forgery, he choked out, his voice cracking. I am a king with no crown and a wolf with no teeth. I am worthless to you. The wind howled around them, whipping Karis's hair into her face. She looked at him, really looked at him. She saw the man who had stood in the rain to buy art he didn't want. The man who had built a pillow fort to make her feel safe. The man who had jumped off a cliff without hesitation. She walked forward. Zarek tried to back up, but he hit the car. He was trapped. Is that what you think? Karis asked. Her voice was calm, dangerously calm. You think I fell for the fur? Everyone wants the wolf, Zarek whispered. The power, the status. I don't, Karis said. She stopped inches from him. She reached out and grabbed the lapels of his ruined shirt. I appraise things for a living, Zarek. I know the difference between value and price. She shook him. Hard. Silas has the price. He has the crown. He has the fancy chair. She looked deep into his muddy, brown, beautiful human eyes. But you? You have the value. You have the heart that jumped into a river. You have the soul that refused to break. That wasn't the wolf, Zarek. That was you. Zarek stared at her. His breath hitched. Tears mixed with the melting snow on his face. But I can't fight him, he whispered. He has the core. So what? Karis challenged. We take it back. How? With what army? Not with an army, Karis said. A fierce, dangerous smile spread across her face. She tapped the side of her head. With an art appraiser. She stepped back. She picked up the bag. She threw it back into the trunk of the car. During the tour, I saw something, she said. The Alpha Core, the stone on the throne. It had a hairline fracture at the base. Zarek frowned. A fracture? That stone is indestructible. Nothing is indestructible, Karis said. Especially not when it's being overloaded by a thief who doesn't know how to handle it. She grabbed his hand. It was cold. She squeezed it until she felt him squeeze back. It's a conductor, Zarek. And if Silas channels too much power through a cracked conductor, what happens? Zarek's eyes widened. The soldier in him woke up. The tactician. It becomes unstable, he murmured. It becomes a bomb. Exactly, Karis said. We don't need to beat him in a fistfight. We just need to break the fake. She pulled him away from the car door. She pulled him toward the passenger seat. Now get in the car, husband, she commanded. We have a kingdom to repossess. For a moment, Zarek didn't move. He looked at her like she was the only light in a dark universe. You are crazy, he whispered. No, Karis said. I'm expensive, and you still owe me. Zarek smiled. It was small. It was jagged. But it was real. He got in the car. The diamond-tipped loop felt heavy in her pocket. It wasn't a sword. It wasn't a gun. It was a tool used to inspect jewelry for scratches. But tonight, it was the only weapon capable of killing a god. Karis stared out the windshield of the stolen SUV. The wipers slapped back and forth, fighting the snow. Slap-thud, slap-thud. It was a hypnotic rhythm of impending doom. Stop staring at it, Zarek said. He was driving. His knuckles were white on the steering wheel. He wasn't wearing his Italian suit anymore. He was wearing a grease-stained mechanic's jacket they had found in the trunk, tight across his broad shoulders. He looked less like a king and more like a brawler. I'm not staring, Karis lied. I'm visualizing. You are visualizing your death, Zarek snapped. He didn't look at her. Karis, this plan is madness. You are going to climb the Iron Throne while an unstable alpha throws lightning at me. If you miss. I don't miss, Karis said. I found a forgery in the Louvre when I was 22. I found the crack in your resume. I'll find the fracture. And what if he kills me first? Zarek asked. The car went silent. The question hung in the air, cold and sharp. Without his wolf, Zarek was mortal. Silas could snap him like a twig. Karis reached over. She covered his hand with hers. Then you die a husband, she whispered. Not a fugitive. Zarek's jaw tightened. He pulled the car off the main road, killing the headlights. They rolled into the darkness of the service entrance. The tunnels, Zarek said, his voice low. They lead directly to the kitchen pantry. From there, it's 50 feet to the throne room. He turned to her. His brown eyes were intense, stripped of all gold but filled with a terrifying amount of love. I will buy you time, he vowed. I will let him beat me. I will let him gloat. But Karis, he grabbed the back of her neck, pulling her forehead to his. If I go down, you run. You don't look back. Promise me. Karis closed her eyes. She breathed in his scent, rain, motor oil, and fear. I promise, she lied. Because of that. She knew she would break it. If he went down, she was taking the whole castle down with him. Let's go, she said. They opened the doors. The cold wind hit them. It was time for the appraisal.
The tunnels smelled of rot and rust. Zarek moved through the dark, cramped passage, his shoulders brushing the wet stone walls. He felt blind. Usually, his night vision would turn this pitch-black tunnel into day. Now, He was stumbling over rats. He hated it. He felt small. "Watch your step," he whispered to Karis, who was breathing hard behind him. "I'm fine," she hissed back. "Just keep moving." They reached the end of the tunnel. A metal grate blocked the way. Zarek grabbed the bars. He pulled. Nothing happened. In the past, he would have ripped this grate off its hinges with 2 fingers. Now, the metal didn't budge. It mocked him. Weak, his mind whispered. Useless human. "Damn it," Zarek grunted. He planted his feet. He strained, his muscles burning, veins popping in his neck. He put every ounce of his human strength into the pull. Groan. The metal shrieked. It gave way, just enough for them to squeeze through. Zarek fell back, panting. His hands were shaking. His palms were bleeding. "You okay?" Karis asked. "I'm fine," he lied. He wiped the blood on his pants. They climbed out into the kitchen. It was empty. The staff had fled when Silas took over, but the hallway wasn't empty. "Halt!" 2 guards stood by the throne room doors. They were huge. Shifters. They held automatic rifles. "Intruders!" one shouted, raising his weapon. Without warning, Zarek moved. He didn't have speed. He didn't have claws, but he had rage. He tackled the first guard. It wasn't graceful. It was a collision of bone and meat. The rifle clattered to the floor. Zarek slammed his forehead into the guard's nose. Crunch. The guard howled, dropping. The second guard swung his rifle butt. It connected with Zarek's ribs. Pain exploded in his side. White-hot agony. Zarek gasped, falling to one knee. "Stay down, traitor," the guard yelled, aiming the barrel at Zarek's head. Zarek looked up. He saw the finger tightening on the trigger. "No," he thought. "Not yet." He grabbed a cast-iron skillet from a prep table next to him. He swung it with a guttural roar. Clang! The pan hit the guard's knee. The bone shattered. The guard went down screaming. Zarek was on him in a second, delivering a chaotic, desperate punch to the jaw that knocked the man out. Silence fell over the kitchen. Zarek knelt there, heaving. Blood dripped from his nose. His ribs were definitely broken. Every breath was a knife. "Zarek!" Karis was beside him, her hands hovering over his chest. "Oh my God." He looked at his shaking hands. They were bruised, bloody. He had won, not because he was an alpha, but because he was stubborn. "I'm okay," he wheezed. He stood up, swaying. He picked up the dropped rifle. He checked the clip. "The doors," he rasped, pointing to the massive oak entrance ahead. "He's in there. I can feel the hum of the core." He looked at Karis. She was pale, clutching her diamond tool like a lifeline. "Go to the servants' entrance behind the throne," Zarek ordered. "I will go through the front. I will make him look at me." "Don't die," Karis whispered. "I'm too stubborn to die," Zarek said. He kissed her hard, tasting copper and fear. Then he pushed her toward the shadows. He turned to the main doors. He took a breath. He kicked them open.
The throne room was vibrating. Karis crept through the narrow gap in the tapestry behind the throne. The air tasted metallic like ozone. She looked up. The Iron Throne was a monstrosity of twisted metal and black stone, and sitting on it was Silas. But he didn't look like a king. He looked like a light bulb about to burst. Veins of glowing blue energy pulsed under his skin. His eyes were burning with a manic, unstable light. The alpha core, the fist-sized diamond set into the top of the throne, was humming violently. It was overloading. Karis's heart hammered. Thump, thump, thump. She was right. The fracture she had seen weeks ago. It couldn't handle this much raw power without the royal bloodline to filter it. "So," Silas boomed. His voice sounded distorted, layered with static. "The hairless ape returns." Karis froze. She peered around the edge of the throne. Zarek stood in the center of the room. He looked small. He was bleeding. He was holding a rifle, but he let it drop to the floor. Clatter. "Hello, Silas," Zarek said. His voice was calm, eerily calm. I came to collect my wife's debt. Silas laughed. A wave of blue energy rippled out from him, cracking the floor tiles. You have no wife, Silas sneered. And you have no power. Look at you. You reek of mortality. Maybe, Zarek said. He took a step forward. But at least I'm not a thief. Silas roared. He raised his hand. A bolt of lightning, pure alpha energy, shot across the room. It hit Zarek. Zarek flew backward. He smashed into a pillar. Crack. He slid to the floor, groaning. Zarek! Karis screamed inside her head. She bit her lip so hard it bled. She couldn't yell. Not yet. Is that it? Zarek wheezed. He pushed himself up. He spat blood. My grandmother hit harder than that. He was baiting him. He was making Silas focus entirely on the man on the floor, as if fate demanded it. Silas stood up. He walked down the steps of the dais, moving toward Zarek to finish him. This was it. Karis stepped out from the tapestry. She was 10 feet below the top of the throne. The stone was rough, jagged. She started to climb. She dug her fingers into the crevices. Her nails broke. Her skirt tore. She hauled herself up, foot by foot. Below her, Silas was monologuing. I will crush you, Zarek. Then I will find your little pet and peel the skin from her bones. Leave her out of this, Zarek shouted, struggling to his feet. Look at me. Karis reached for the next handhold. She slipped. Scrape. Her shoe skidded on the stone. Silas froze. He tilted his head. What was that? Silas whispered. Karis held her breath. She hung there, clinging to the back of the throne, praying. It was the sound of your reign ending, Zarek yelled, charging forward with his bare fists. Silas turned back to Zarek, blasting him again. Zarek screamed as the energy burned him, but he stayed on his feet. He refused to fall. Karis pulled herself up. She crested the top of the throne. There it was, the Alpha Core. It was glowing so bright it hurt her eyes. And there, at the base, the hairline fracture. It was pulsing, widening, expanding with the pressure. She pulled out the diamond loop. She unfolded the sharp, pointed tip. Hey, Silas! Karis screamed. The general spun around. He looked up at the top of his own throne. His eyes went wide. You? Silas gasped. Me, Karis said. She raised the tool. I'm appraising your administration. No! Silas shrieked. He raised his hand to fire at her. 0 stars, Karis yelled. She swung the diamond tip down. She struck the fracture with everything she had. Ping. The sound was tiny, but the reaction was nuclear.
Ping. The sound was small, tiny, like a coin dropping on a sidewalk. But the result? The result was the end of the world. Zarek watched from the floor, blood dripping into his eyes. He saw Karis strike the stone. He saw the fracture spiderweb. Crack. The Alpha Core didn't just break. It detonated. A shockwave of pure, blue light exploded outward. It hit General Silas first. No. Silas screamed, but the scream was cut short. The energy overloaded him. He wasn't a vessel. He was a leaky cup trying to hold the ocean. His body arched. He glowed so bright it burned Zarek's retinas. Then, silence. Silas collapsed, unconscious and smoking, the stolen power ripping out of him in a violent wave. The energy rushed across the room. It was looking for a home. It found Zarek. In the span of a breath, the hollow feeling vanished. It hit him like a freight train of gold. Heat, power, the roar of 1,000 ancestors. His bones snapped not from injury, but from the sudden, violent return of the shift. He didn't fight it. He welcomed it. Mine, the wolf roared. Zarek's body contorted. Fur burst from his skin. The pain was exquisite. It was the feeling of a king putting on his armor. He rose. He wasn't a battered human anymore. He was the Black Alpha, massive, terrifying. His eyes were 2 burning suns of liquid gold. He looked at Silas's body. The usurper was breathing, but barely. broken by greed. Zarek stepped over him. He didn't bother to kill him. The core had already judged him. He looked up. The throne was covered in dust. The top had been blown off. And there, clinging to the jagged edge, was Carys. She was coughing. She was gray with debris, but she was alive. She looked down at him. Her eyes went wide. She saw the wolf. Zarek growled. It wasn't a threat. It was a question. Are you hurt? She shook her head. The wolf crouched. He leapt. He cleared the dais in a single bound. He landed softly next to her on the ruined platform. He nudged her hand with his massive, wet nose. She buried her fingers in his fur. She cried. And for the first time in the history of the kingdom, the wolf didn't care about the throne. He only cared about the woman sitting on top of it.
The dust tasted like chalk. Carys sat on the ruins of the Iron Throne, her legs dangling over the edge. Her diamond loop was shattered in her hand. It was worth $3,000. She didn't care. In front of her, the massive black wolf began to shimmer. The fur retracted. The bones shifted. It was a fluid, magical dance of anatomy. A moment later, Zarek stood there. He was naked. He was covered in soot, and he was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. He didn't reach for a robe. He reached for her. You, he rasped. His voice was deep again, vibrating with that familiar alpha bass. You crazy, reckless, brilliant woman. He pulled her off the stone. He didn't set her on her feet. He held her suspended against his chest, her legs wrapping instinctively around his waist. I told you, Carys whispered, wiping a smudge of dirt from his cheek. I don't miss. You could have died, Zarek said. He buried his face in her neck, inhaling deeply. When that stone cracked, my heart stopped. It had to be done, Carys said. She leaned back, looking into his eyes. They were gold again, bright, swirling gold. The forgery had to be destroyed. Zarek looked at her, really looked at her. The contract is gone, he said, burned in the cabin. I know, Carys said. Her heart did a slow, painful flip. So, I guess I'm unemployed. No, Zarek growled. He kissed her. It wasn't a desperate kiss like on the balcony. It was a promise. It was soft, possessive, and overwhelming. He kissed her like she was the air he needed to breathe. You are not unemployed, Zarek murmured against her lips. I am negotiating a new contract. Oh, Carys raised an eyebrow, though her breath was shaky. What are the terms? Lifetime tenure, Zarek said. Full access to the treasury, and you have to sleep in the bed. No pillows. Carys laughed. And the socks? I will wash my own damn socks, Zarek swore. Then I accept, Carys whispered. As the silence stretched, he carried her out of the throne room. He stepped over Silas without looking down. He walked past the stunned guards who were rushing in. He carried his queen into the light.
The council chamber was quiet. Too quiet. The advisors sat in their chairs, looking pale. They looked at the empty seat at the head of the table. They looked at the man standing by the window. Zarek turned around. He was wearing a new suit. It was black, impeccable. So, Zarek said. His voice echoed off the stone walls. We need to discuss the new laws. Laws, Your Majesty? One advisor squeaked. But, tradition states. Tradition nearly destroyed us. Zarek cut him off. He walked to the table. He placed a hand on the back of his chair. Tradition said I needed a royal bloodline. Tradition said I needed a breeding mare. He looked at the door. Come in, he commanded. The doors opened. Carys walked in. She wasn't wearing a gown. She was wearing a sharp, navy blue business suit. Her hair was pulled back in a tight bun. She held a briefcase. She looked sharp, dangerous. She didn't walk behind him. She walked next to him. This is Carys, Zarek said. She is the queen. But she is human, the advisor protested. She has no wolf. She doesn't need a wolf. Zarek said. She has eyes. He pulled out the chair next to his. Not a smaller chair, an identical chair. He had ordered it from the carpenter that morning. Sit, Zarek said to her. Carrie sat. She opened her briefcase. She pulled out a stack of files. I've been reviewing the budget, Karis said, looking around the table. And I have some questions about the entertainment expenses in the West Wing. The advisors paled. Zarek smiled. He sat down next to her. He took her hand under the table. Eventually, the world would know. They would know that the Alpha King didn't rule alone. He looked at his wife. She was terrifying the treasurer with a spreadsheet. Mine, the wolf purred, satisfied. Zarek squeezed her hand. Give him hell, Mrs. Vane, he whispered. Karis winked at him. It's your majesty to you, she whispered back. Zarek leaned back. The war was over. The debt was paid. And for the first time in his life, the king was finally rich.